Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. Today I'll be speaking about how we, as career counselors in training, can learn to more effectively tailor our services to provide vocational guidance for refugees. This summer, refugees have been in the news on a regular basis. From discussions of the humanitarian aid crisis along the southern border of the United States, to the exodus of individuals from the Middle East and former Soviet Union due to military conflicts. As you can see, a lot of different news sources have been reporting about these topics. And while this may seem like a fairly specialized niche market, the state of Oregon welcomes approximately 1,000 refugees each year. Did you know that since 1975, 61,431 men and women have moved to Oregon as refugees? Nearly half of our state's refugee population is made up of Southeast Asians from Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Former Soviet citizens make up 31%. And the remaining piece of the pie includes a diverse population from countries such as Afghanistan, Bhutan, Somalia, and the others you see listed here. It's hard to group these men and women in one category since they represent such a range of cultural expression and religious beliefs. However, as a group, they do share some common struggles and needs. These refugees are seeking employment in our communities and facing obstacles that many of us will never have to imagine. For some of us, providing vocational guidance for refugees may present a new career opportunity, as well as an opening to provide further mental health services related to trauma, cross-cultural living, and grief. Well, we have a lot to learn. Where shall we start? How about a definition? What does it mean to be a refugee? As you can see here, the United Nations gives us a very technical term. I'll give you a moment to read it. The State of Oregon Department of Human Services summarizes this technical definition as a refugee is a target for persecution in their home country. When we think of refugees, we're usually not using a technical definition, and we may use refugee to include asylees as well. Asylees are those who seek protection upon arrival at a port of entry to the United States. Refugees are those who seek protection while living in another country. What about immigrants? How are they different? In the PBS miniseries, The New Americans, we find this helpful distinction, and I quote, "People often assume there is no difference between immigrants and refugees, but the difference is important for economic, social, and legal reasons. Refugees are forced to leave their home countries because of war, environmental disasters, political persecution, and/or religious or ethnic intolerance. They come to the United States with a special immigration status that gives them automatic admission into the country and helps them connect with family members who are already in the country. This status provides them with a green card, and refugees are invited to live in the States to start a new life. Immigrants, on the other hand, generally come to the U.S. for one of two reasons. Either they're coming to move close to family who have moved here, or they're economic immigrants seeking work and a better life for themselves. Immigrants and refugees do have a great deal in common. They both experience new cultures and languages. They are often ethnic minorities who might face open discrimination or other forms of hostility regardless of their immigration status. For the sake of our presentation today, I'd like to focus specifically on the population of refugees and asylees here in Oregon. Since these men and women are granted special status by the federal government, there are specific programs designed to help them adjust to life in the Pacific Northwest and become self-sustaining members of our local communities. As we consider our work in the field of career counseling, we would do well to learn more about these programs and services and the needs of the refugee community. The next slide will show the definition of a refugee according to the State of Oregon's Department of Human Services. This is a list of the qualifications for receiving refugee benefits from the state of Oregon. You may be wondering why refugees and asylees are granted special status, and it helps to have a bit of a history lesson to better understand this phenomenon. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Immigration Statistics, the first government legislation occurred in 1948, when the Displaced Persons Act allowed 400,000 Eastern Europeans to enter the United States. This act was intended to protect men and women from Nazi persecution or discrimination on the basis of religion, race, or political views following World War II. Legislators passed the Refugee Relief Act of 1953 and the Fair Share Refugee Act of 1960. Sometimes the government has created legislation in response to world events in which the occupants of one country or region are specifically protected. We have a few examples of this, and if you're following on your handout, you'll see in 1958 the government created the Hungarian Refugee Act, in 1966 the Cuban Refugee Act, and in 1977 the Indo-Chinese Refugee Act, which was passed to provide entry to Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodian refugees. Well, why was this necessary? According to the Office of Homeland Security, before the start of each new fiscal year, the President and Congress together establish a total number of refugees that may be admitted to the United States, as well as regional allocations. For example, in 2012, and I'll quote this from the report, the total number of refugees authorized for admission was 76,000. The largest regional allocation was to the Near East South Asia region, which accounted for 47% of the authorized admissions number to continue accommodating refugee arrivals from Iraq, Burma, and Bhutan. When conflict erupts on the world stage, legislation may be required to raise the annual allocation to accommodate special populations in need of protection. And now the next few slides, we'll just look at some of these statistics in a visual representation. Here you see that the orange designates countries from which refugees come, the green countries which have taken in refugees. On this map, we see a global overview, and many of these statistics use 2012 as that is the most current statistical data that has been compiled. These are people who are internally displaced by conflict and violence. Here's a parallel map. These are individuals displaced by disasters. Here's a look at the overview of the refugee resettlement ceilings, as I mentioned. Currently, we're at 76,000 people that are admitted each year, and you can see that's dropped significantly over time. And here's a look at the refugee admission to the United States in the past several years. And finally, this map is an interesting one. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a key that explains how that pie chart works. It shows the ethnic makeup of the refugee population in each of these major metropolitan areas. The darkest states have the most refugees resettled by state. What is American life like for these refugees? Finding a job is just one of many challenges that refugees face. If we wish to help them with employment, we need to have a basic understanding of the entire refugee experience. A helpful resource for learning more about refugees living in America is a comprehensive report prepared for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is a philanthropic organization with a special focus on healthcare. In 2006, the consulting firm of Lake, Snell, Perry, Merman, and Decision Research compiled a 32-page report exploring refugees' needs. If you have an interest in working with refugees at some point, I highly recommend this resource to you. It's a comprehensive and readable study, and you'll see a link to it provided in your handout. For today's purposes, I'll just share some highlights with you that will help us better understand how we can effectively serve refugees. I'll read the titles of the report headings, which act as a shorthand of the findings. So first, we discover that immigrants and refugees say that their lack of English proficiency is a barrier to a better life. Refugees really value English as a second language programs. However, it can be difficult for them to access them. The kinds of jobs available to refugees usually require them to work odd hours or weekends, and ESL classes are generally offered on weeknights or weekends. This can make it challenging for refugees to take advantage of services. Many immigrant and refugee parents describe a variety of problems with schools as well. Immigrant and refugee children are not prepared for success in U.S. schools. Many of these refugee children may have had erratic, if any, educational experience before moving to the United States. In addition, they may have been exposed to trauma through war. Parents report that they find it difficult to help their children with homework and advocate with their children at the school. They don't speak the language, they don't understand how the systems work. A number of parents say their children face discrimination in schools, and Somali and Arab immigrants in particular worry about schools Americanizing their children. Another issue, many immigrants and refugees feel stuck in low-level jobs and describe numerous barriers to advancing. In addition to the language barrier, many immigrants and refugees lack safe, affordable housing, and becoming citizens is their shared goal. That means that finding a job that really fits with their skills and abilities and interests often takes a back seat. Undocumented immigrants and refugees awaiting asylum status find it hard to get access to social services. They may have a fear of being deported, which causes them to be reluctant to seek assistance. And refugees want and need information about their rights. There are many barriers to obtaining health services. Most refugees included in this survey did not have preventive health care. We know too that refugees may have been exposed to illness and other issues when they were living in refugee camps before coming to the United States. Transportation is a major problem. There are barriers to refugees learning to drive legally. How can they take the driver's exam when they don't have materials or an instructor who speaks their native language? Public transit often does not provide an answer either, as refugees report that their work schedules don't fall in line with bus schedules, and sometimes economics alone force them to live far away from the centers and routes that buses serve. Immigrant and refugee families are under stress. Children often embrace American culture, while parents hold on to tradition. The workplace is the primary site for exploitation and discrimination. Immigrants and refugees report negative interactions with law enforcement, and Arab immigrants report that the discrimination has increased since the events of September 11th. Immigrants and refugees experience language barriers and a lack of cultural sensitivity from healthcare providers. Refugees may also need healthcare assistance in terms of mental health support, given some of the trauma they've experienced, traveling to the United States or living in refugee camps prior to arriving. The healthcare system needs to learn how to address cultural stigmas around receiving mental health services. and create services that are both affordable and culturally relevant. Given these findings, how can we help? First, I think it's important to realize that integrating faith may help refugees feel greater confidence in our services. You may wish to think about how you could present yourself as a faith-based career counselor that helps clients connect to their values with vocational decisions. Many refugees really value faith, and that provides us with an ability to legitimize the services we're offering. Second, part of our approach needs to address the practical barriers that refugees face by moving to the United States. Some of us may go on to become experts in this specific niche. However, perhaps most of us can best serve this population by becoming familiar with the organizations in our communities that are already offering services in ESL training, navigating public transportation, parenting skills, working with local schools, and so on. I'm pleased to report that Portland has some outstanding resources we can use. This helps our client address these barriers and also connect with other refugees for emotional and relational support. Third, refugees face two job crises: finding an initial job when they first arrive in the States, and then second, trying to find a long-term opportunity that will provide them with better income and the chance to more fully use their skills, experience, and abilities. We can use the skills and career consulting methods we've learned in this course to assist refugees in their search for long-term positions in the American job market. And fourth, as caring mental health professionals, we may also consider using our vocational guidance as a means for building a therapeutic relationship that could later provide opportunity for refugees to address other specific mental health concerns. Given that other cultures may not be as open as ours toward mental health services, it might be hard for them to seek professional assistance with issues such as trauma, grief, loneliness, anxiety, depression. Once we earn clients' trust through offering valuable career assistance and connecting them to resources, we may consider offering them counseling related to other aspects of their experience as refugees. And I'd like to leave you with an overview of some of the local organizations that are doing great work in this area. First of all, we see the state of Oregon provides services. I'd encourage you to familiarize yourself with this DHS website and read carefully through the different links that they offer here. If you learn about just one local organization that is working with refugees, you'll need to know about IRCO, the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization. IRCO provides workshops for refugees designed to remove barriers to employment. The topics range from navigating local transportation, learning about child care options, to cultural guidelines of the American marketplace. IRCO also provides placement services for part-time and full-time work. In one program, they match refugees with career counselors like you and I. They have centers in Northeast and Southeast Portland which cater to refugees from Africa and Southeast Asia, and they have a specific center designed to help the population of senior refugees. If you're interested in providing vocational guidance to refugees, you may consider gaining first-hand experience by volunteering with IRCO. They offer a number of opportunities for teaching classes or working one-on-one with refugees. If you find that this population is a good fit for your personality and skills, volunteering may lead to an employment opportunity. The Oregon Health and Science University also offers special services to local refugees through their intercultural psychiatric program in Southeast Portland. They opened the program in 1977, and in their words, it provides culturally sensitive mental health services for immigrant, refugees, and ethnic communities with an emphasis on individuals and families whose first language is not English. They've received national recognition, and they offer services to populations with over 1,300 active clients. They have 16 counselors and 8 part-time physicians, and they offer services in 15 languages. including Arabic, Farsi, Burmese, Russian, Somali, Spanish, Kurdish, Laotian, Swahili, Vietnamese, and more. They also have a special service for those that have been exposed to torture as a result of their experience and have received commendation for their work with this population. We have some faith-based organizations that help with resettlement. Catholic Charities, for example, Lutheran Community Services, and the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. Each of these faith-based organizations help specifically with refugees finding homes, home furnishings, and provide some advocacy, legal services, asylum counseling, and help connect volunteers with refugee families new to the area. As you can see, there are many opportunities for us as career counselors to become involved with the refugee population. I encourage you to take some time to review some of the links and resources I've provided on the handout and seriously consider if God might be calling you to work with this group in one way or another.